Welcome today to our Building Confidence in HR webinar that is being facilitated by HR Recruit, Marion Hewitt and Deborah Wilkes. My name's Jo Thompson and I'm a consultant for HR Recruit. I'm joined today by Marion and Deborah, who will introduce themselves shortly. This webinar follows on from our successful imposter syndrome webinar that we ran in September. In this follow-up session, we will explore further the learnings from the research of Marion and Deborah, and they will set out some clear actions to bring about. If you do have any burning questions during the session, then please put them into the chat box facility and we will cover them at the end. I'm now going to hand over to Marion and Deborah, who will introduce themselves and start the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll share the screen.
All right, so going into the actual slideshow.
Have you got it?
Yeah, it's like as a slideshow, not the whole thing, but that's good. Right, that'll work. So yeah, welcome to this session. Deborah and I have done quite a few of these over the last few years, and topics evolve, and we did some further research this year, which we did the initial findings of, but we had far more than we could actually get into one session. Hence, we came back today. We would like to make it a bit interactive, as we have done before, and we'll be using Mentimeter or Menti. So if you've familiar with this, you'll know how to sign up. If not, please scan the code, or Deborah, you can explain them. You can scan the QR code, or you can go to the site and put in the code that's there. But if you can do that, we'll be asking you some questions in a minute. So we'll just put that up for a second.
Yeah, so menti.com, and you'll get this screen, and then you can just put the number in.
So we'll do a couple of things on that in a minute. But just to introduce ourselves, if you haven't met between us, we've never actually calculated it, but we've got quite a lot of years of experience within the people profession there. And we probably wouldn't like the number if we did add it up. But where our work we have very much sort of a common thread in an interest in the belief in the people profession and belief in HR, the impact we can have. But we approach it from a slightly different way now, which is why it works well together when we're working. So my aim very much is I work with both individuals and organisations around well-being, drawing on the science of positive psychology for all those things that lead to enhanced performance and productivity, both at an individual level and for organisations. And obviously, from the people profession perspective, this is about how to support people within HR so they feel their best and can do their best. Deborah, do you want to do your brief intro?
Yeah. So I worked my way up through HR and ended up heading the HR function for the UK and then for Europe. And then I did that for a few years, but actually decided to set up my own business because the bit I like best is developing people. So developed leaders and managers across all functions for about 20 years. And then a few years ago, really reconnected with my HR roots and wanted to help HR people really move into a new level of operating. And that's when Enable HR was born. Now we've got a question for you. So in Menti, again, just in case you haven't managed to get in yet, menti.com, put in that code 44578503, and you will be able to put in your response. I'll hide the results to start with. So key words, really. What helps you to feel more confident?
Oh, suggest there's a couple of leading.
Yeah, what's that big blue one?
Blue one.
Okay, another second and I'll reveal the results. Okay.
Mm,
That's interesting, isn't it?
that's very interesting.
That
Yeah.
knowledge comes up top.
Yes, my mind's going quite a lot on thinking of that, how that what that actually means in practice, and how it links to what we were talking about with imposter syndrome and our findings. And yes, definitely knowledge comes out. What else have we got? Support, feedback, positive feedback, encouragement, understanding. So a range of things, but as you can see, the knowledge comes out as a clear one. As I forgot to say right at the beginning, or some of you have picked it up because there's already some things into the chat. Deborah is kindly giving away 3 copies of her book, and if you would like to go into a draw to win a copy of that, if you put your email address and name into the chat, you can either go into the open chat, or if you want to keep it more private, you can just put it across to select the host option, host and panelist option, so it doesn't go into the wider chat, but we'll be following that up afterwards. So we'll be moving on and just think about what we will be covering. And it's interesting to reflect back on those findings. So thank you all for taking part within that bit. So what we are going to look at is the reaching in bit. What do we want to do from inside? What might be holding us back? It's knowledge is part of it, but as we probably know, it's a lot more complex than that. And what particular strategies? And then that reaching out bit, when we're really wanting to build and increase our impact, increase our confidence. What does that actually look like in terms of day-to-day activities and what we might do? Where we have gone through today, we are very much trying to be practical and to give you some options and some things to you and actually take away. So when we do that, please, when we're giving these thoughts around, just make notes, try and take away some practical things that will make a difference for you.
Yes, and I've got an exercise for you to do later. So do have paper and pen ready. So we wanted to recap why this research, why are we looking at confidence? And it's really because confidence underpins performance. So when we look at this virtuous circle, if HR professionals are confident, HR wins a hearing. And when HR wins a hearing, it's able to leverage its capabilities. And when HR does that, then leaders hear and learn. And as a result, HR is respected, involved, and aligned, and the organization benefits. So that's why we researched how HR is regarded by the organization, how you regard your own function, and your self-perceptions. Now, all of them are actually your perceptions, just to make that clear, rather than having asked your organizations. And it's so important because now you will know this feeling. I know this feeling. If you're not feeling confident, then people don't listen to you. You're not able to leverage your capabilities. Leaders don't change. HR isn't respected, and therefore you have little impact. So this is why confidence is so important. We had a really good mix of responses to the survey. You can see we've got managers, HRBPs, and directors. So when we think about this reaching in, we're going to start with Marion going to the inside bits, and then we'll come back to me for a model to help you to build your own confidence and the business's confidence by demonstrating how HR has impact.
Thank you. So one of the questions we asked was about the confidence level that you felt. And this is where the research is at the moment. So it is still open. So if you haven't yet added your views to it, please do so. And if we look at data, you always have that initial view of what the data is telling us, but then we want to dig around it a bit more, because what actually is the best column to be in? And at the bottom there, we've got 4% of people saying they're rarely feeling confident in their role, which is not going to be a comfortable place to be. That low levels of confidence is when we've got high levels of self-doubt. We like to have increased anxiety. We're going to miss out on opportunities. If we are often confident, that suggests that we've got that level of ability, lower levels of self-doubt, but there will be times when we're feeling less confident and perhaps uncomfortable. But perhaps one of the column that creates a bit more of a challenge, if we think about it, is if somebody is always confident, is that necessarily a good thing? Because actually, if we are always confident, it is quite likely that we're not pushing ourselves, we're not challenging ourselves, we're staying in a zone that's comfortable. And actually, that may mean you're not taking opportunities to do something because you wouldn't have the confidence. So you keep yourself in that place. So, looking at it, being always confident is not necessarily a positive. I mean, we can look at it in different ways, whether we're looking at self-belief or low levels of self-doubt. A lot of this is about language and how we look at it. But just think about, having a good level of confidence most of the time is the best place, I would argue, that we want to be. So if we think about what does that mean? How do we get out of that if we're or into a place where we've got a comfortable level of confidence most of the time? And this is the initial model came from a well-known book called by Jeffers way back about feel the fear and do it anyway. And what that talks about is how you move out of that comfort zone. So when we have that initial comfort zone, as it says, we feel we've got the competence, we've got the knowledge, we've got the skills, we feel psychologically safe. But it doesn't enable learning and growth, because we're confining ourselves. And we make decisions based on what feels comfortable. But actually, growth has got to have a level of discomfort. Working at Brené Brown talks about the vulnerability. We have to make ourselves vulnerable. We have to make ourselves less comfortable. And that takes courage. But it's about doing it in a way that is manageable for us. It's not sticking ourselves into some huge area that we really haven't got the skills and the knowledge and the ability. It's about how we can take those small steps. And Jeffers talks about that risk 1, the risk 2. So taking that small step. So what could you do? They encourages each day to do one thing that just widens that space a little bit. Perhaps saying no to something we actually haven't got time for whilst thinking we should do, or speaking to somebody that you might feel intimidating. Just taking that risk, those small risks each day will gradually stretch that comfort zone. So thinking about what that means in terms of where we want our confidence level to actually be. And then when we were talking about imposter syndrome, so this is where people were concerned they were not as competent as people thought they were. And we've got quite a range of things. So, we've got 8% of people that always feel that. And that's an uncomfortable, so it's quite a sad place to be. Actually, if you think that it means when people are not recognizing what they are doing, not recognizing what they're actually achieving. So probably this is, 43% of people sometimes experience. And I would imagine that most people probably, realistically, there'll be, if we are in an area of discomfort, we might at times feel that we shouldn't be there. So I'd have said that's probably a realistic place to expect to be, but we don't want to be there too often. So if we remember, symptoms of imposter syndrome would be perfectionism, fear of failure, discounting achievements, overworking, not expressing views, constantly seeking approval. Sorry, don't worry, I haven't got to that yet. And then the impact of it is actually our performance and productivity is negatively affected, and our health and well-being is also affected. So imposter syndrome is not a comfortable place to be. It's not usually indicative of actually what our abilities are, but it's actually how we can get to that place that means we have a level of self-belief, we have a confidence in our competence, but also have the courage to move out of the place that's comfortable to grow and stretch ourselves, because that growth comes in a place of discomfort. So what can we do? It's not always, it's not as straightforward as being able to suddenly think ourselves confident, to suddenly tell ourselves, we can do it. We know there are a huge number of things that will influence how that works. Our psychological our thinking, how we process things, our beliefs. It's a very much a multifaceted thing, but we need to look at what we can practically do. So think about the things that might have influenced how you've got to now. It's going to be linked to limiting beliefs, messaging you had in earlier life, that need to feel safe, perhaps the culture you work in, the leadership, the management style that you've been used to will all influence that. But I'm now going to go through a few areas just to give you a bit of, hopefully, food for thought and perhaps some actions to take. So the first one is about acknowledging and normalizing feelings, because if we acknowledge them and name them, it can actually reduce the intensity. And it's what's actually been found is that when people are able to do that, it's about engaging a different part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which actually, if you like, reconnects the logical thinking, as opposed to the amygdala, which is the stress response part of the brain, which is the bit that is causing that overreaction to things. So acknowledge and normalize. If something is difficult and we're finding it difficult, it is perfectly okay and acceptable to find it that way. So by admitting those feelings, right, I'm still there. By admitting those feelings of self-doubt, we're then in a place to actually process them better. So a practical thing would be to journal. There's lots of benefits of journaling. So, notice your thoughts, notice your feelings, but do them without judgment. I notice I'm feeling the emotion of. So sort of separating them from you rather than letting it consume you. So notice, acknowledge, and normalize how you're feeling rather than thinking it's only me. And then the next one is about feedback and support. So imposter syndrome will thrive in isolation. We continue to give ourselves the messaging that's not helpful. And having feedback gives us, if you like, a reality check. We get a more balanced perspective of things, and we manage the stress better. And it also does give us clarity on what are areas of growth, where are your current strengths. And if we are doing it on our own, we have a tendency to focus on the negatives, whereas if we're actively seeking that feedback. So, have regular one-to-ones with people whose views that you value, seek out a mentor, join peer groups to share experiences. So you get that shared feedback and mutual support. So you get that more balanced perspective. The next one is about challenging negative self-talk. Now, this is not an easy one if it's something that you've got used to, if you have that internal narrative that is reinforcing the feelings of self-doubt. It's where CBT things come in. It's about how you can process and program your thinking differently, pick up distortions in your thinking. But at a simple level, just reframe your language, and put the word just in because it's not that straightforward. Look at where you can reframe your language. Replace things like I can't with I'm learning, or the power of the word yet. I can't do that yet. And challenge when you notice your internal voice that is being very negative. And then the continual learning. Imposter syndrome really stems from that fear of being inadequate. And actually, we know that enhancing our competency is going to be beneficial in terms of overall mastery and feeling capable. So think about what can you actually do, what will help you to learn. Not about signing up to huge things, but actually what will be beneficial. So set small achievable goals in this area, attend workshops, webinars, to keep that growth mindset going. And then celebrate the things that you do achieve. We are very good at noticing the things that haven't gone well, but actually, do we ever make an I've done list? I have an achieve list. At the end of each day, we write a to-do list. But actually, do we ever stop and acknowledge what we have actually achieved during the day? Share accomplishments at team meetings. There's so much research around the benefits of gratitude, noticing what's good. And that gratitude, the positive reflection, has been strongly associated with levels of well-being and reduced levels of burnout. So think about what you might be able to do with that. And then this next one is linked in some ways to some of the other ones, but how you can reframe that failure as learning. Imposter syndrome is very much about a fear of failure, but we want to adopt that growth mindset. If any of you come across the work of Carol Dweck, whether we have that fixed mindset belief that what we can learn, who we are is fixed, or the growth mindset. What we know is having that curiosity to learn. And actually, we have to fail as part of learning. Quotes from Einstein is about, failure is progress in success, or actually you never fail until you stop trying, because that failure is part of that learning. So what can you do in terms of reflecting when something doesn't go well? What would I do differently next time? What have I learned as an outcome of that setback? And reflect on it, but as a learning rather than the focus on that negative cycle of negative thinking that feeds into all the things that are not helpful. And this next one, I think it is quite a big one, because it's about what is important to you, and have that personal definition of success. We often, will not, if we're feeling uncomfortable, it's often because what we're expected to do doesn't align with what's important to us. And that has very much a negative impact on us in terms of motivation and well-being. So be clear on what your core values are and make sure they're aligned with your professional goals. And regularly revisit and think on these, because that's what's important to us. That's going to be our key driver. And we'll often find that things that we're not achieving, or the things that we're not doing, when we actually, the things that we never get round to, quite often we'll find that it's because there's some level of conflict with our values, or some reason that it's not important to us, or even contrary. So work out your personal definition of success, and then have your plan in relation to that. And then just a couple more would be mentoring. So mentoring reinforces that confidence through the teaching effect. And also doing that mentoring increases the depths of the mentor's understanding. So that is a really powerful way that can help you. So think about where you can participate in mentoring programs. You haven't got to be at the very senior level at an organisation to mentor somebody. You can be mentoring in lots of different working relationships. So think about that, because it does increase the awareness of expertise. But it's great to be constantly looking to learn, having that curiosity and passion. That the more I learn, the less I feel like I understand, because you learn that there's far more out there than we can ever learn. And then the last one, those of you that have done been to things that I've done will know that this is always going to come in somewhere, is that importance of self-compassion, that how we treat ourselves with kindness. And this is really important in the case of when we think something hasn't gone well, or when we are feeling self-doubt. And we know that, so having high levels of self-compassion has been shown to link to pretty much every element of well-being, performance, productivity, and growth. And it's about these elements are about, we want to move away from the ones on the right and have more on the ones on the left. So self-kindness, speaking to yourself as somebody that you cared about, not a constant internal narrative. That common humanity against isolation. So recognizing that, yes, this is difficult. Yes, it's okay that I'm finding this hard, rather than that isolation in our difficulty. Well, everybody else is okay. It's only me that's struggling. And then the mindfulness against the over-identification. So the mindfulness is about noticing how we feel. It's acknowledging the emotions rather than getting totally wrapped up in them. So the main focus on this action would be looking at how you're talking to yourself, noticing the narrative, and practice talking to yourself as you would to someone you cared about and valued. And sometimes, if you speak out that really said something out vocally, then think about, would I say this to a friend? And often you wouldn't. So speak to yourself in the same way. So and then if we just look at we link that to the next bit. All of this will link to whether people are going to take challenges, going to take on new opportunities. Because if we're staying in the comfort zone, we're not going to be risking that. If we're not feeling confident, we're not going to be risking that. And actually, we want people to go from not just wanting to take on new challenges, but actually taking those challenges, saying yes, and grabbing every opportunity. And when we do that, Deborah, I'll pass over to you in terms of the reaching out, what we will actually do in practice.
Yes, that's always so thought-provoking, your material, Marion, and especially that thought that it just strikes me every time. The things we say to ourselves, I don't think we would dream of saying to other people. So and we don't need to. We don't need to be this hard on ourselves, because I'm the same. So when we look at this as a function, one of the things that we're looking at here is, do we have imposter syndrome as a function, and how do we build our confidence as a function? And you might remember this arrow, especially those of you that did the survey. I use this a lot. People always do a lot of nodding, and it's, are we still clearing up the mess? Are we responding well operationally, but feeling catch-up mode? Or is it getting a bit better? Are we involved early in executing what the business wants us to do, but they didn't necessarily ask us first? Or are we out in front because we were involved in those strategic decisions? So in the survey, we asked this in two ways. We said, what do you think senior leaders would say about HR within those 4 levels? And secondly, in which of those zones do you spend most of your time? And you'll see actually the results are fairly consistent. So there is broad agreement, and we know this from articles that we see, stuff in the media. So really, HR is still operating in a respond role, if not a react role. And it's so important for us to do something about that, because this is a great statistic from Gartner, if you want to catch up with this report. But what it's saying is they've actually measured if HR are operating in that orange zone, is basically what this means. This is about really partnering with the business. Not only can you increase performance of employees by 22%, actually that translates into increase in profit of 9%. I mean, just imagine if you could add that to your businesses. And that the biggest obstacle in moving HR forward, Deloitte have measured, is legacy mindsets and practices. And it's clear how confidence relates to that, and how staying in our comfort zone, it doesn't help the profession move forward. So that's our challenge to you as well. Of course, Marion's bit is more nurturing and my bit is more challenging. So there are 3 ways that we ask this question. HR recognised by senior leadership as key in delivering organisational success. Not bad. We've still got some people down here who just don't think they are. Seen by stakeholders to focus on the right things. Again, it's mixed. You'd want it to be higher, really, wouldn't you? And we allocate resources to the HR activities that help drive success. So again, you would really want it to be higher, and you'd want there to be a conversation about that as well, wouldn't you? You'd want to say to the business, what do you want us to work on? Are we working on the right things? And in my experience, we don't have those conversations. So again, we've got a Menti question here, and while you're picking up your devices, I'll explain why I'm asking it. So in a minute, we're going to look at that success model, and that's going to ask you to look at what your business really needs to deliver, and then HR's role in that. So you can ask this question as well. What keeps you awake at night? So do put in your responses. You can use phrases for this one because profitability, yeah, keeping the right people in the business. It's good if they're tuned into that. Right to work compliance. Ooh. Getting things wrong, yeah, growth. Doing the same or more with less people. Oh dear. Profit, keeping people, not meeting targets, legal claims. These are great. Yeah, the unpredictability of the market. So presumably you mean your commercial market. Mental health issues of employees, churn, return. See, these are good because the majority of them are answering the question about what keeps your business leaders awake at night rather than what's keeping us in HR awake at night. Because that's the challenge is for us. Oh, press space to group responses.
I've seen that one. See what happens.
Oh, look at that.
That would have been good.
It would, wouldn't it? Excuse me, messing about with my I thought that was going to be brilliant then. It would be difficult actually to do that, wouldn't it, here?
Yeah. Well, that
So
profit and finance comes as quite a key
yeah,
thing.
and getting the right people, keeping the right people. So the challenge is that what keeps business leaders awake at night? Probably the thing that keeps them awake is meeting their own targets. So it's really important for us to tune into that. So I want to introduce you to this success model, and this is why I want you to have the piece of paper ready because you're going to start scribbling on your own. And if anybody wants to pick this up with me afterwards, please do. So there's a really good logic here that for us in HR is completely natural. We have to create the conditions so that people can optimize processes. Processes become more and more important all the time, that leverage the drivers of the external customer behavior that delivers results. So we're going to work this through. So think about your organization. What are the results that you absolutely have to deliver? I've kind of given you the answer here because this is pretty straightforward. For most of us, it is profit and it's shareholder value. If you're in the public sector, it might be reputation or community. So these are the things that absolutely have to deliver. And then the next thing here, and there's real magic in this because it is the customers who deliver those results. It's the things that they actually do or don't do. So what is it that you need your customers to do that delivers results? So let's think about a supermarket. We all go to supermarkets. They've got to deliver profit, shareholder value, and they've got to get the media saying good things about them as well. In order for them to achieve those, then you and I have got to go into the supermarket. We've got to choose that supermarket. We've got to be able to find the goods that we want. We've got to buy. So the customer behavior that you want is for people to buy again, tell other people, come back. So this is our behavior as supermarket customers that delivers those results. And customers will do those things because they experience the right drivers. So if you consider the choice that you make when you decide which supermarket to go to, it might be these things. It might be the product, they've got the right range, might be the price, might be the service. There are certain drivers that get you to go to your favorite supermarket. So here you can be scribbling for your organization. What are the drivers for the behavior that you want from your customers? And some of these are optimized, good word, or leveraged by processes. So if you think about the supermarket again, you've got that checkout, and they've captured all sorts of processes within that technology, because obviously they're using it to give you a nice customer experience and get you through the checkout quickly. It's also communicating with the stock people, all sorts of things, maybe your loyalty card. There's all sorts of things going on in that particular process. So in your organization, you will also have processes that drive the behavior of the external customers. And then, of course, you have people who use those processes that optimize the drivers to get the customers to do more of what you want. And in order for them to do that, they need to operate in the conditions that enable all these things. So for me, this is a great tool, because we know that most of what HR does is at the back end here. And so it's difficult to explain to a hard-nosed business leader why we need to invest, for example, in leadership development. What impact does that have on sales? Sales depend on customer behavior. Either they buy or they don't. It's absolute. And there are some drivers that make that happen. So if HR can relate its work to those things, then we can create a really good link. Can you hear my dog barking? So this is a really good worked example. So let's look at the front. So this is an IT service company. So imagine this is your IT supplier. They might be internal or they might be external. So if we think about ours, we've got an external IT company. We know that they hang on a minute. Yes. So I am the customer. Lost myself there for a minute. They've got to deliver profit and shareholder value. I am the customer. So how am I going to decide whether or not I'm going to stay, renew my contract, buy more, or tell other people? And for most of us, when we think about IT, it might be the quality of the last service call I had. The very last time I contacted them to say, would you help me with this? Were they helpful? Did they make me feel stupid? Were they quick? Did they fix the problem? So let's assume that that's then a driver for the customer behavior of most of their customers. Then inside that company, they have got this process of picking up the tickets. You know, you do a ticket and then they write to you afterwards and they say, what was your experience with Maxine or Joe or whoever? And you give them feedback. And then the person who's giving the customer service should get some kind of feedback from all the customer feedback. And let's just imagine how their manager manages that conversation. So let's say they messed up a bit. And I said on my feedback thing, actually they were a bit quick, they were in a rush. So they sit down with the manager. Do they just say something really abrupt, like, you've got to make sure that you take your time, when at the same time they might be under pressure to handle calls quickly. So for this to work well, this customer service person needs the person that my dog's putting me off. Can you hear it or not?
You're
Good, right, I'm going to ignore it then. He's barking his head off. So back to a customer service rep. Here he is. He's handled the call. He's getting feedback from the call. And that person's manager will do it really nicely and kindly if they are coached and mentored by the manager. And that's only going to happen if the leadership people, the leaders, create the culture within which coaching and mentoring is supported. So let's do that from this end. When you have the conditions in place, like all these things, let's say leadership, so that people know that coaching and mentoring is really important and you do need to take time for it, then the feedback following a service call will be done right. It'll be supportive, it'll work, and the quality of the service calls will go up, and the customers will stay. And that means that you get more profit and shareholder value. So I hope you can see the power of that. Shall I leave that up there just for a minute? Because that was quite a lot to take in.
such a great model.
So the reason it relates to this really is because it helps HR to build its confidence. So, of course, in this survey, our title had this double meaning: confidence in HR. How confident is the business in HR? And how high is the confidence within HR? So if you're confident, you win a hearing, you're able to leverage your capabilities, leaders listen to you, you're respected, involved, and aligned, and the organization benefits. So the purpose of this model is to give you the ammunition to be able to prove the value of what you're doing. So in fact, one of the things that we do at Enable HR is build dashboards for clients so that you can actually demonstrate the connections here. You've probably got a lot of measures down at the back end, like retention and so on. You've probably got engagement scores. And you can build in some of the financial data, maybe operational data, to actually demonstrate. It's difficult to get causal links, but when your investment in leadership development goes up, for example, when your engagement scores go up, then customer retention goes up. So that's the link. So if you yourself feel confident of the value that you are adding, it's going to make you feel far more confident when you go into senior leaders and to be able to say to them, the reason you need to invest in this, or the reason you need to listen to us is because, and you can make the connections explicit, because usually business leaders don't understand it. So we can have a few questions, maybe. We'll let Joe manage the time. But let's have your thoughts on this. What's had impact on your thinking today? Yes, confidence breeds confidence. And I think it's really important for HR to come together to build their confidence. Yeah, the impact of HR, it's so important.
Deborah and I have been sending each other articles over the last week. There seems to be a bit of a run in terms of HR bashing in the media at the moment. I don't know if anybody else has picked things up.
Yeah.
And it's really dispiriting when you know that actually it comes from people with just a lack of understanding of what we actually do as a profession. I'm proud of having spent my career within HR. I believe we have impact. And then, you read some of these things where, HR is put out as a very, derogatory terms, and HR police and all these phrases. And actually, when we're looking at it here, we actually know we can make a real impact in organisations, but we need to have that inner confidence to do so.
And get better at demonstrating it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether I've got some more here. No. Stay with these for a minute.
Yeah, so we've got, confidence, yeah, I think that first one, confidence breeds confidence. Yeah, confidence in the impact, confidence in my ability. Yeah. And when it's about our ability, sometimes, it's against what you're benchmarking it against. There's always more to learn if you've got that growth mindset, but that doesn't negate all the expertise and competence that you've got. And sometimes we forget that.
Yeah, so some great points there.
Links to end goals. Yeah, that's resonated.
So we'd like to remind you the survey is still open. So if you haven't yet completed it, please do. Do please keep in touch with us. Reach out to us. Do connect with us on LinkedIn. We've got some events here from Marion. Do you want to say anything about this?
Just the main program I have is the Unleashing You program, which is drawing on positive psychology for growth, well-being and performance. And I've got a series of free workshops at the beginning of next year, all linked to well-being. And I also do wider mental health and a strategic approach to well-being workshops for leaders. So you can find more details there.
You'll get this in the follow-up. And we've run several workshops, several webinars recently. So there are some recordings that you might be interested in. So we've got links to those. And that's what we do. And at that point, I'll stop sharing and we'll see if we have
there's
questions.
Well, Vicky Layton put her hand up a long time ago, very patiently. I don't know if you want to come off mute and ask a question, or if there are any other questions in there.
They've not got the opportunity to speak, I don't think. No.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. In that case, the question would need to go into the chat.
Yes, do put questions in the chat.
Can't see any.
Thank you, Fee, for saying it's really useful for your CIPD.
Two people have raised a hand. I think you're better off putting your questions in the chat.
Yeah, sorry if we can't come on mute, we can't hear. But or you can ask a question. You can contact us via LinkedIn, or you'll have our email details. You're very welcome to contact either both of us after that. We're very happy. We're always happy to talk on this topic. So we've tried to include quite a lot for you, and I hope so. The key thing we wanted to do this one was to give some practical tools and actions for you to take away. So hopefully we've achieved that.
Oh, Karen's put a question in. If there was one quote or tip to address unhelpful dialogue, what would it be?
Do you mean if you were meaning internal dialogue, which is usually for many people one of the biggest obstacles? For me, it is about talking to yourself with the kindness that you would treat somebody that you cared about.
I think also catch yourself doing it. And that what Marion was saying about kindness and realizing that we have to be kind to ourselves in order to protect our mental health.
And often, I'm talking about it and writing about it, people think it's a soft and fluffy behavior. And it's not, because all the research shows the benefits of it. But it's a much nicer way of living. I mean, I think most of us are a work in progress, and certainly a work in progress. But absolutely, as Deborah said, we have to start by noticing that internal narrative and noticing how we're talking. But it's much nicer to have talk to a friend who's supportive and kind than talk to somebody that's going to criticize it and run us down all the time. And we have the control of that narrative inside. So it's practice. It is practice.
And Ali says we've put a pep in her step to get through the week.
That sounds good.
That's
I'll go
marvelous,
with that.
Ali. Because it is a tough job. And I think one of the things that makes it hard is when we think about confidence as well, is that we have to switch in HR between quite emotional scenarios to quite business-minded scenarios. And so when you're helping someone, and we do have to help someone, because there was so much stuff a while ago about HR need to be tough, they've got to be so business-minded, they really need to not be soft. I actually sent a message to Dave Orich to say, what do you think about this? And he said, you have to have people who care in an organization, and that has to be HR. So we do, it's a privilege and a burden. So I do think that in order for us to fulfill that role, we do have to be vulnerable and empathetic. And therefore, switching from that, because you might have to do it in a moment, to a meeting where actually you've got to be very business minded, I think that's quite challenging. And it's a unique challenge. Other functions don't have that.
And it requires a huge range of skills, to have those soft skills, and soft is totally the wrong word. But, having the ability to build the connections, to be empathetic, and then going in and talking a different language, because it's still ultimately, it's all for the same outcome. It's just needed that multifaceted approach. And certainly I do assessing for level 7 for CIPD, but getting people how you can get that real strategic approach, that the language, but recognizing it's coming through the supporting part as well. I think we probably had better wind up.
Thank you everyone for the comments.
Being mindful of time for people. Sorry, I'm still reading comments that are coming through on the other. We'll go through those. If there's any particular comments, we're happy to follow up with people afterwards. But thank you ever so much for joining. It's great to have such a high level of interest.
Thank you very much. We'll send out some correspondence to everyone that signed up for the event this afternoon, and I'll put a post on LinkedIn. So if you would like a copy of the follow-up slides or recording, then please put a comment against the LinkedIn post. Our next event is on the 16th of January, called Taking Action for Wellbeing and Work-Life Balance in 2025. And that's also being facilitated by Marion.
That's me.
So if you'd like to join us again for that, a link to sign up for this will be included in the email. If anyone's recruiting, we've also got accountancy recruit, FD recruit and exec recruit within the group. Otherwise, I'd just like to say a massive thanks to Marion and Deborah for your time and effort into putting the event together, and also to everyone for tuning in. Thank you.